with Wichita Public Schools. I am our Marketing and Strategic Partnerships Supervisor. This is one of our fantastic strategic partnerships that we are so glad to have and to be able to bring back into our schools this year. And I am in charge of coordinating the Read to Succeed program for Wichita Public Schools.
I'll let you run the computer while I get started. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Shasta. I am with United Way of the Plains. I have many things that I do out there, but one of the things that I love the most is that I get to coordinate the Read to Succeed training and coordinating, and I get to work with Women United to bring it all together. For those of you that might have come into the auditorium right after we started, you don't have to leave, but there's a notebook on the table out there. If you wouldn't mind making sure you sign your name on it before you leave, so I make sure I recorded that you guys attended training. Again, thank you for being here. So Read to Succeed is an initiative that just focuses on making sure that children are reading at grade level as they're leaving third grade. It is powered by our Women United Affinity group. Women United is a group of like-minded individuals that contribute to United Way, and they come together to network or to focus on this initiative. They are very, very proud of this initiative. This is something that they developed, and we were able to partner with 259 to implement. So thank you all. A little bit about the program history. So we started this program off in 2015, and we were in one school. I believe Gardner was our first school. And we had 22 coaches, and we've been very fortunate to grow through the years. We weren't able to do the program last year, which I'm sure most of you know that. So we're super excited to get back in there and get our feet on the ground and start helping the kids again. We are in 21 schools. We also have 3 schools that have a pilot second grade program so that we can start helping them a little bit early, just kind of putting those roots in a little bit earlier in the children's development. And this is a list of the schools that we're at. So one of the many great things about Read to Succeed is that it has really true measurable results. Year after year, we see positive results of the children that participate in this program. And what this slide is showing you is that the average number of words per minute gained weekly that is deemed realistic is 1. And they call 1.5 words a minute growth and ambitious growth. And if you look at the very bottom, you can see that the children in this program are at 1.28. You can also see that they are actually exceeding their growth over those not in the program. So on average, Read to Succeed students begin third grade reading 6.5 words per minute behind those not in the program. And by the end of the school year, they're surpassing their peers by half a word per minute. So you may wonder if you're making a difference, and you are. You are making a huge difference in these children's lives, and you're changing the trajectory of their future by giving your time. I'm going to let Susie take it from here.
Okay, so you may wonder why we start with third grade. And that is because of this statistic you see on the screen. If students are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade, then they are 4 times less likely to graduate high school on time. And if they come from a low-income family, which about 75% of our students in the district qualify as low income, then that goes up to even 6 times less likely to graduate from high school on time. So, and the reason behind this is that after third grade, they transition from learning how to read to reading to learn. So if they haven't gotten those grade level skills, math word problems are going to be harder. Science textbooks are going to be harder. Every other subject becomes more difficult if they haven't gotten those reading skills down by the time they finish third grade. So that's why we're really really laser focused on this. It's one of our long-term goals as the district, is to improve the third grade reading skills. And so you are also making a major impact on the district's overall goals by being part of this initiative. How we chose the schools. You may hear people wonder why we're at some schools and not others. You may wonder why we're not at the school that's closest to your office. The way we chose our schools was sort of 3 criteria. They had a higher than average number of students who were just below that grade level as they were testing into 3rd grade. They have the capacity and the need for the program, so they have somebody, whether that's a volunteer coordinator, an instructional coach, a principal, a teacher, they have somebody that can dedicate the time needed to communicate with you and with the teachers and the students. And many of them are in our lower income areas of school of the city to address what we just talked about in terms of that statistic going up even higher for our low income students. We don't expect you to completely understand this reading rope. This is a very detailed version of what they teach our teachers about the components that go into learning to read for students. And really what we want you all to understand is that there are many different components of reading. The part that you are really going to help the students with is fluency and comprehension. So you have language comprehension up at the top, which is not just can I read the letter A, B, and C, but do I have the context I need to understand what's happening in a story. Shannon Benoit, who helped to found this program in the district, shared the example that she was reading a book with her son, and it was set in New York City. And it was about an urban prince and princess, and they're riding in a carriage, a horse-drawn carriage, and he jerks his arm around the princess. And her son just starts cracking up because he's like, he jerked his arm around the princess. And she was like, oh, no, that's not what that means. So she took him over to the couch, sat down next to him, and said, this is what jerking his arm around the princess means. And there were buildings in New York City that he didn't understand the context of. So part of what your role as a reading coach can be is if you're reading a story with the child and they start laughing at something that shouldn't really be funny, or they struggle with answering comprehension questions, you can give context so they start to make those connections that they may not otherwise make because they just haven't been exposed to some of the things that may be in different types of books. And then we also talk about that there are word recognition pieces as well, the ability to recognize those sight words, the ones that we all just know because we know, the, at, than, him, her, those words that maybe sometimes don't follow any other conventions that they might be learning in class, that you just have to help them recognize and practice and repeat over and over. So those are some of the things that go into creating a skilled reader, somebody who can fluently execute on comprehending and reading a text. So what does it take for a student to be able to read? In your packets, and we'll address this a little bit later more, but you'll get a packet each time you go to read at your school, and inside that there will be a reading reference sheet. And it will help you understand the pieces that are really part of the work that we're doing with students. So for any of you who have not participated before, what happens when you go to read with the child is that the goal is for them to read a book to you. So it's all about the student having a dedicated 20 to 30 minutes to practice their reading by reading aloud with a dedicated adult volunteer who can help make those corrections as they're reading, can provide that context. So that's why we really focus on that reading reference sheet on fluency, accuracy, and comprehension. Those are the pieces that we as volunteers can most help with. The teachers are going to focus on a lot of those other things, decoding and spelling and all the complicated terms that we as educators don't necessarily fully understand, or we have some educators in the room, they may understand it better than I do, but these are the pieces that we can really make a difference on. So that's why they are shown on that reading reference sheet that you'll get in your packet when you start to volunteer. And then just to kind of help you understand why might your child, the student that you're working with, be struggling to read and be part of this program. It could be because they just didn't grow up being read to. They aren't in a home environment where reading is encouraged. And so they just haven't had that same exposure that some other students have had, and they need that time to practice and listen and have somebody who cares about them read with them and show them why it matters. They may not understand why reading is important. And so if you have any stories that you can share about what you have to read in the work that you do, so they can help to start to understand that reading is always going to be an applicable, valuable life skill. Some of them it will be because they're frustrated. Because they are struggling, they get even more frustrated, and then that's going to lead to even more struggling. So being that coach that can be there to say, mistakes are okay, here's how we can practice this, and really help them work through that frustration is also a good thing that we can do. Some of them just may not be practicing enough, and that's why we're doing what we are doing. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of context to the context clues piece, something you may hear about that you may not be familiar with is in Wichita Public Schools we have started the transition to using a standards reference grading model. So in our elementary schools, they don't receive A, B, C, or D grades. They are graded on standards, and they are graded from a 0 to a 4, and that number, hopefully, increases throughout the year. So their grade at the end of the first quarter is not a grade for the end of the year. So it's showing how much progress they've made at the beginning of the year. All you really need to know is you won't hear them say that I have a B in reading, because they're not being graded that way. And they may reference specific standards that they know that they need to be working on, because that's the type of work that teachers are doing with students, is to help them understand these are the things that you should be able to do by the end of your second or third grade year. And here's how we're practicing that, and here's how we're showing that you can do that. And so they may be able to actually articulate that in different places. So yes, they know what they're doing in this area, but they struggle with doing it on time. And so those are reflected in two different places. And then we also make sure that things like bringing Kleenex for extra credit aren't reflected in academic grades. So it really helps teachers, parents, and students understand exactly what a child knows and can do, and be able to work toward improving that even more. And this is really just to demonstrate at second grade and at third grade, the standard that we're helping with is basically the same. What changes is that part down on the bottom of how many words per minute they should be able to read by what point in a school year. And then one thing we always need to make sure we address is there is the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, FERPA, and HIPAA, which help us protect students' information. So you will receive some information about students that most people won't. You'll know their name and what school they go to and what grade they're in. And the fact that they are participating in this program means that they are struggling in reading, right? So that's information that we want to keep to ourselves. So you can absolutely talk with the teacher of the student's class, with your coordinator at the school if you have questions, if you're struggling with how to help them with something. But we ask that when you're back at work, when you're out in public, that you don't have discussions about your reading student, because we want to make sure that we keep that information as private as possible. Wichita is a big, small town, and you never know when, especially if you use the student's name or you describe them in a way that is very unique to that student, that you may be sitting next to their aunt or their parent or their grandparent. And so you want to make sure that any conversations you're having about a student are kept between you and those who work directly with that student in the school system. That also applies to photography, social media. If you want to take a picture with your student, your volunteer coordinator may ask you to take a picture with the student to do a Christmas gift or something like that. You may want to share that you're part of this great program. Those things are okay as long as you have checked with the teacher that they are not on our do not photograph list. There are some students who have opted out of being photographed, so you want to make sure that they're not on that list. and you want to make sure that you don't share any of that very specific information about the student. Don't share their name, don't share who their teacher is, anything like that that could be identifiable. You want to make sure you keep that information out of any social media posts. But we do want you to be able to share that you are part of a fantastic program that's making a difference in students' lives. So just be very careful about how you do that. And then I think we might address it later as well, but in addition to that, don't connect with them on social media. They are all under 13. They should not be on any social media platforms. But, you know, kids. So if they ask you to connect with them on social media, if they ask you for your cell phone number, your email address, don't share any of that information with the student either. That relationship needs to stay in the classroom, in the school building. Okay, parking. This is always something we get questions about. We have neighborhood elementary schools. That means they are built into neighborhoods, and some of them have very limited parking options. So we definitely recommend that next week when you go for your tour, or the first week that you are there, that you get there a little bit early so you can scout out what that parking situation is. Maybe even Google search it, look at the Google Earth map ahead of time to see where the parking is, so you can get an idea of what that might look like. This is especially important for anybody whose school has a reading time toward the end of the school day, which for our elementary schools, they get out at 4:10. So if you see on your time that it's anywhere close to that 4 o'clock time frame, when you are leaving, there will be parents there ready to pick up their students. There will be buses there. So you want to make sure that you haven't parked in an area where the buses are going to track you in and you have to wait until they're ready to leave. So scout that out ahead of time. If you have any questions about it, ask your coordinator for the school. You should already have their contact information from Shasta, so they can help you kind of identify that as well. But just give yourself a little bit of grace time that first or second time to figure out where it is that's going to work well for parking, how long it's going to take you to get from there into the office to check in, and that type of thing. And then I think this is my last slide. We want to give you, again, a little bit of context about why we've selected the times that we have. You might be like, why am I showing up at 4:05 p.m.? That might be the end. But anyway, it's a random time, right? It's not over your lunch hour. And the reason that we do that is because we have set these times based on when the schools have identified as their English language arts learning time. So this volunteer activity happens during a time that they would be reading anyway, and so it just adds on to what they're learning during their day. So it doesn't disrupt their classroom time. When you come into a classroom, the teacher will still be working with other students. You'll just wave to your buddy and they'll come right out to you. So it doesn't interrupt anything that's happening in class. It doesn't take them out of any other activities that they might have been wanting to participate in. So it really helps keep that school day intact. And it helps that child be excited about getting to see you, because it's not taking them away from something else that they might have wanted to do instead. So that's why they're all at different times at each school, and they're at sort of random times. But there is a method to the randomness.
Hi, everyone. Hello? Hello? Hi, everyone. My name's Justine Milline. I'm the chair of Women United, but I've also been a reading coach right since inception of this program. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about tips and tools to help you with your student this year. When you arrive at the school on your first day, you will get a student snapshot, which will just tell you a little bit about your student, their name, what grade they're in, what age they are, who their teacher is. And you'll also get a Get to Know You worksheet, which is super important because you'll learn what their likes and dislikes are. They'll tell you what their favourite colour is, if they're into sports, if they have siblings. And this is important to help you choosing a book for them. So if they're into soccer, then you can find a book about soccer, and that helps to get them a book that they can get engaged in. So that sheet is super important to go through, and the first day is probably the best day to do that, and so the next time you turn up, you know a little bit about your student. You'll also get the reading reference sheet that Susie talked about. This will help you to go through the process of knowing how to read with them effectively. There will be a timesheet in your package. This is important to fill out each week so the teacher knows that you've been and read with your child, and they can keep track of how many times that you've had this interaction with your student. There'll be a ruler, also important. Sometimes this helps to use the ruler underneath the words to help them keep the flow of reading going well. Most of the children I've read with have needed that ruler in the first stages just to help them keep on track with the words in the book. And a bookmark. They just love having a bookmark. So if they don't have one in the pack, make one or buy some because it helps them to focus on where they are in the book next time you turn up. Book selection. This is really important. They will try to pick a book that might not necessarily be suitable for them. They really love comic books, picture books. So if you can, steer them away from those books and try to get one that's got more words in it. Sometimes they might try to get a book that is a little bit too difficult for them. Speak to the reading coordinator. They know what books are suitable to use to work with your students. So if you have any problems with books, connect with the coordinator and you can find a book that will work. The process for picking the books varies by school. Sometimes the teachers will put plastic bins out with suitable books in. Sometimes your student will be able to go and pick the book themselves. Or sometimes they'll arrive with a book that they're already reading in class. So you'll learn pretty fast which book and which process you're going to use for this session. If you have any questions at all about the book that the student has picked, connect with your coordinator. It's really important that you are using a suitable book, and this will help you each week to improve their reading if you've got the right book.
And I'll just add on that, you may know if the book was too hard, if they're having a hard time reading it quickly. So if it's taking 5 minutes to get through one page of a book, maybe next time you want to try and pick a slightly easier book. If they are just flying through the book, then it might be a little bit too easy, and next time you want to try and look for a book that's a little bit more challenging. So you're not going to necessarily get it right every day, but you can use some of those types of clues to make sure that you are at the right level with the student.
Tips, what's worked for other coaches? I mean, it varies by child, but flashcards or review lists of commonly missed words really helps a lot. They will struggle with some words consistently, so perhaps make some flashcards of some of the words that they struggle with. Finger following and the ruler, like I said before, the finger following and the ruler really helps them with their speed and just helps them to keep track of where they are on the page. Consistently using the same book. Try not to switch the books too often. If possible, get a book that you can use for a couple of weeks. That helps them a great deal. If you're switching the books out too often, they will lose track and they'll lose interest. So try to keep the same book as much as possible. Start and end with comprehension questions. This is really important because sometimes they're reading and they're not actually comprehending what they're reading. So I like to start the session by asking some questions about what you read last week, and then end the session with asking some questions about what they have read. And that just helps you to know that they have understood what they're reading. And then sometimes they get a little bored and they'll lose interest towards the end. So to help, maybe you just read aloud with them a little. I wouldn't do it for too long because the whole point of the process is for them to be reading. But if it helps just to keep them with their boredom towards the end, just read a little loud yourself to them for the last couple of minutes or so.
I've even utilized having them read a page and then I read a page.
It varies by student. Some students don't want to read. First, used to take some stickers, and if they did a great job, give them a sticker. And that just gets them excited. They go back to the classroom and they said, oh, I read 3 pages today and I got my sticker. You might want to give them a fun pen or pencil or bookmark. We don't encourage you to give the students gifts, and we don't really encourage you to give the students gifts when you're in the library or wherever you're doing your reading session. If you do have a gift for your student, make it reading appropriate and give it to the student's teacher or the reading coordinator. That just stops any other children seeing that they're getting gifts and causing issues. Most of the reading coaches like to give out books, perhaps at Christmas or on a student's birthday, and that's fine as well, but give it to the teacher or the reading coordinator if possible. Important, learn how to say and spell your student's name. Just like us, it's kind of important if somebody knows your name and says it properly. Establish boundaries. High fives, fist bumps and side hugs are appropriate. Nothing else if possible. I mean, don't be hugging your student or having them sitting on your lap or anything like that. Don't share your cell phone number or connect with your student on social media, like Susie said. Listen carefully and remember details. That's very obvious that we're all going to do that. Be tolerant of mistakes. Make sure that your student knows that mistakes are all part of learning. Build self-confidence. Some of them will be nervous at first and will make mistakes, so just build that self-confidence and let them know that they're doing great. Know that improvement will come slowly and your patience may be tested. I think that each week you'll start to see an improvement in your students' reading, and it's great to see that you're actually having an effect on them. And if you let them know how well they're doing each week, that'll help them to stay focused on reading with you. And when you have any questions or you've got any concerns, reach out to your reading coordinator. The reading coordinators are there to help you in this process, and they're super helpful. They know your student very well and they'll help you if you've got any questions or concerns. Next steps. Take the questions and reading reference sheet handouts. Any additional copies will be provided in the package at school when you get there on the first day. Complete the USD 259 volunteer registration online if you haven't already done that. You'll get a reminder email the week before tours with your school of the day to volunteer and who your school coordinator is. So you probably have all had those emails by now. You know who your school, which school you're going to, what time, and who your coordinator is. School tours are available the week of September 27th, so that's next week. If you haven't been to your school before, I would suggest that you go to this just so you know where you're going and where you'll be reading with your student and how to find your student, where their classrooms will be. And then coaching begins the week of October 4th, and you should receive an email about what day and time you are to turn up for your coaching. When you go for your school tour or your first session, bring your driving license with you to the office. This is important so they can provide you with a fob that you can use each time you go into the school, so you don't have to provide your identification again. If you've already been given a fob, I think you can carry on using that from previous years.
Sorry, I know we have a few 259 staff members in the room, so for those of you, you can just use your regular ID. Okay. So your first meeting, pick up your packet, which your reading coordinator will have left out for you. It will have your student's name and your name on the front of it. Complete your volunteer timesheet with what day you are there and what time you arrived. And then get to know your student. The worksheet will be in the packet, so sit with your student and go through that worksheet. And then, the great part, pick a book together.
So go off and talk about different books and decide on which book you'd like to start with your student. And then start reading if you've got enough time that day. I would suggest that you do try to find some time that day just to perhaps read a page or two once you've got to know them. And then remember to end on time. It's really, I know you might get a little bit and get too engaged with them and feel like you can have an extra 5 or 10 minutes, but please try to end on time and get them back to the classrooms for their next lesson. And escort your student back to the classroom that they need to go back to. If you find one day that you can't turn up for your session, get in touch with your reading coordinator and let them know. They're pretty flexible about changing the day, but it's really important that you let them know if you can't make it, so they can let the student know. The student will build a strong bond with you, and they get excited about seeing you each week regularly. And so if you don't show up, they get upset, and they will hold you accountable if you don't show up. So if for some reason life happens and you can't make it for your session, just email your coordinator and let them know, and they will organise a different day for you to turn up.
And then before we open up to questions, I will address COVID. We know, unfortunately, that is still a reality. Thank you all for wearing your masks today and keeping them on. We do ask that you do the same thing every time you show up at the school to read with the student. Masks are required for all students, staff, and visitors at this point in time. And so anytime we're inside WPS facilities, we're going to have a mask on. The student should have the mask on as well. If at any time you feel any symptoms, please do not come to read that day. Let your coordinator know. We want to make sure that we keep you safe, that we keep the students and the staff safe. Should you find out at any time that you have tested positive for COVID, we hope and pray that that does not happen for any of our volunteers. But please do let your coordinator know if it would have happened during the time that you might have gone to read and not known yet that you were positive. We want to make sure that we're keeping those open lines of communication. We will keep that information only to the people that need to know that information, but we do need to know if that happens. Vice versa, if somehow you were potentially exposed at school, if it's part of that contact tracing, we will be sure to let you know. That's why we need your email addresses and contact information. We will do our absolute best to keep you informed and safe as well.
We had a really great question in the chat. It was, will I be notified if a student is absent from school? You will not be notified if the child is absent because everybody wants to be a part of this program. So when you go, if your child isn't there, the teacher will pair you up with another student for that week to read with. Your coordinators will, of course, let you know when schools are closed for conferences or breaks so that you're not there for that. But there's always going to be a child that wants to read with you, so never fear about that.
And if there should be a snow day or a weather day that would cause schools to be closed, we will notify Shasta so that she can try and get that information out to all of you. If your school coordinator doesn't also send that information out, you can also always watch our Facebook, social media. It will probably be on the news. There will be many ways that we try and tell you that information. But if we are closed because of weather, no students are here. So if you show up, there won't be anybody for you to read with. And you know, it feels like that should be common sense, but even I, as a district employee, one time tried to go over to Caldwell on a snow day, and luckily my coworker stopped me before I left the building. But we try to keep that information flowing, but just kind of be aware of that type of thing. You may still be at work, but the students might not be at school.
Does anybody have any other questions?
The email we got list of school contact, and you mentioned reading coordinator, school coordinator, are they all the same?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the question?
His question was, is a meeting coordinator and a school coordinator the same? Is that how I understood it? Reading coordinator. that you received in your email, and we are using those terms interchangeably. So yes, that's going to be your coordinator. Yes, ma'am.
If you have previously filled out the form,
I have to come closer to you, Laura.
if you have previously filled out the form, do you need to fill it out every year? What's the story about that?
Are you referring to the background check form?
Background check.
Yes, our school board policy does require that all volunteers complete that registration form each year.
This year, I saw that there was a calendar you could sign up for practice for the initial meeting. I'm used to just a roll schedule. Is that gonna be something we get after school?
Like the Outlook invitation?
Well, on the recent site, you can choose your school and the date you wanted to show up. And I wasn't sure if that was for like me signing up for my specific reading time or just the first time, if that makes sense.
So the question is, when you registered for your school and your time, is that a recurring time or was that just your first visit? And the answer to that question is that's going to be your time throughout the school year. That's the time and date that you will meet with the child.
And there is just one school where at the second grade, Tuesday and Wednesday are one time, and Thursday is a different time of day. So if you are at that school, you'll want to make sure that you keep that in mind. We'll make sure the coordinator communicates that with the volunteers at that school. But if you are typically going on Tuesday and 1 week you need to go on Thursday instead, you'll want to make sure that
Would be if that child were to move out of district or to a different school. And that's only happened to me once. And I was just paired up with another reader that I finished the year with. Good questions. Anybody else?
So just to clarify, the week of the 27th, next week, I go to the school at my usual time and assigned time, and then they're going to take me through a tour. And will I get a packet that day?
So the question is, next week, the week of the 27th, will I go to the school on my assigned time and kind of what's going to happen? So yes, if your reading time at Minaha is 12:40, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, I'm throwing that out there. On Tuesdays, whatever you signed up for, next week you will go to the school on that day. The coordinators will give you a tour of the school a little bit, let you know where your children's classrooms are, depending on if you're second or third grade coaching. They'll probably teach you or show you where bathrooms are, things like that, where you'll read at. It's different in every school where they have you reading with the children at, and where to get your packets and where those are stored and where book bins are. And they will run through the logistics of the school with you next week. You will not be with your student next week. You might find out who it is. They could possibly have your snapshot of the child in your packets, but you won't actually read with them next week.
So I would say that I just got my email yesterday from my coordinator, and the dates that I'm supposed to go next week to tour, I'm given tours of two, it's not my normal reading day, so it might be different.
Okay, so we had somebody here in the room mention that their coordinator gave them 2 specific days and times for their tour next week. We do have some new coordinators this year, so they might have approached that a little bit differently. Typically, it is the 3 days of the week that reading happens at the time the reading happens. There may be a few who are otherwise assigned to something during those times. And so they may have needed to do something a little bit different. But if you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to ask your coordinator, and you can always copy that rqs@unitedway.org on any communication you send to your coordinator. Feel free to copy her as well, so that we can make sure that we're all staying in the loop about any questions or concerns or changes that are happening.
end date? We go through May?
Yes, typically we've gone through about the second week in May. I'm not sure when school ends this year, but it will be around mid-May, maybe that first week of May.
And you'll have a school calendar in your packets, I believe, or the coordinator will give you one. You can also always find it on our usd259.org website, so you know when Christmas break is, when spring break is, the week of Thanksgiving. Only Tuesday readers would actually go. Some schools may just say we're not doing anything the week of Thanksgiving because they may be doing other pre-break activities and things like that. So if there's anything different on a school-by-school basis from what's on that district calendar, that's where your coordinator will be sure to share that information with you.
Is there going to be any information about your statistics? Because, you know, I've been doing this since it started, and you guys talk about 0.5 word or point to the second decimal point and so forth. And to me, I've never been told or explained the data point significant. How significant is that? And then the other thing is, I noticed, and I think it's wonderful, that now we're going to be reading for 40 minutes.
So I'm going to address, let me...
Is that related?
Yep.
And how did you arrive to this? Because before they were cutting, we started with half an hour, then we went to 20, and then there were 15 minutes.
Okay, so, yep, let me, we are not changing that actually. That was a little bit of a miscommunication between us. We're both new to running this, and the data that I got and shared, we had to update that. So you will get a shorter reading block time sent to you. It is still only 20 to 30 minutes. So if you've got a time that's 45 or 50 minutes, please know you will get an update. It is not that long. It may still take that much time total out of your day to get there and back, but the actual reading block is still only 20 to 30 minutes. So that's the answer to that question. And then the question about the data. Because of the Student Privacy Act, we cannot give our volunteers specific data about their student. We do get the aggregate data for each school and for each and for the program as a whole. And so that's that goes back to that slide. The question about how much difference is that 0.2 significant? Is the 0.5 significant? Sorry for anybody online who's seeing this go really fast. An increase of 1 word per minute is what is considered realistic growth, and 1.5 is considered ambitious. So if they are improving by 1.28 minutes, then that is more than the realistic expectation, not quite to the ambitious growth. So yes, it would be considered something that is a significant improvement. Does that answer the question?
No, but on the curve, if you're going to put that on the curve, is that 0.5? The significance of that change per se, you have to explain. It doesn't matter, but you must have data people that know this stuff. Can you explain it or send us a note? I would be interested to know, how did you arrive to this ambitious or very ambitious or... You see, I don't think you have any other slides that show
No,
that.
that's just where it's
You see,
I can try and find out. I am not the data person,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know.
I think some
that
of us
piece.
would like to know, some of us that, are interested in data, because you're feeding this data as the reason why we should be doing this, part of the reason. And I just want to know, how was it arrived at? What is the actual significance, mathematical significance of that, and how did you arrive at? Or what is it? Should it be two decimal places or just one? You see what I mean?
Sure, yes. I don't know the answer to that, but if we can get that, we'll get it.
I'm sorry, I'm just curious.
So the question was related to data and how we're deriving at what classifies as good and ambitious, and we will work on getting that information, what the sources of that information are, and we can share that.
Other questions? Yes.
Did I understand correctly that emails were sent to all of us
telling who our reading coordinator was? Because I don't remember getting that. I got the reminder to be here, but I don't
Sure.
have.
So the question is whether emails were sent letting people know who their reading coordinator is, and I'm going to let Shasta answer that.
So when you registered for your school, there should have been a follow-up email that came through with your coordinator's name on it. At some point in time, we will send out something else so that you're aware of your coordinators. But yes, it was sent out after you registered. With the exception of Park, I don't think we had a coordinator at Park until just this week. That'd be the only exception.
Okay, I'm not at heart, so.
Any other questions? This is an inquisitive group. I like that. Yes, ma'am.
So this is my first time volunteering for this. The goal is just at the end of the school year, that student is supposed to be able to read feedback, a book. That is, that would have been hard for them maybe at the beginning of the school year, but then they progress to reading that book, or they progress through different levels of books getting harder for them to read, and then rise to the challenge. Right?
So the question was, is the goal of the program to have the child reading quicker, more fluently, going through books quicker, those type of things at the end of your mentoring time with them in May? And I guess the quick answer is yes. To me, that is one of the most amazing things about this program is when I start with my child in October, we may be struggling and we may be reading, I can't think of one, I had one student that liked Fly Guy books. And those are pretty low on the scale of what they should be reading. And at the end of it, we were reading a Chapter Man book called Dog Man. So you will see, as you're reading with them, you're going to see them getting better. And you're going to see more confidence. And you're going to see them getting excited. And those things are what's so rewarding about this program, is you're firsthand getting to experience that. So organically, yes, those things should be happening.
And I'll just add, but also don't put so much pressure on yourself that you feel like if they didn't make a lot of visible to you progress by the end of the year, you are one part of that reading rope. You are not the entire rope. And so they may have made a lot of progress on the scores and on their testing that you may not immediately notice in what you're doing with them, and that's okay too. For some kids, it's about the adult caring about them even more or just as much as the very specific score. For some kids, it may just be that they're now excited to read when at the beginning of the year they dreaded doing it, right? So there may be different things that you see as progress, and that's going to vary from student to student. And so for you as a volunteer, just know that anything that you're doing, any time you're spending with them, is progress, is important, is valuable to them, and is valuable to you, even if you don't necessarily see it very visibly, because that may not always happen, but the teacher will know and the student will know, and you'll see different types of progress as well.
Any other questions? Justine, do you have anything that you want to add to anything?
No, just enjoy it. I hope you all have fun and
talk about this opportunity as much as possible. We are open to more coaches. We still have some schools that need coaches, and obviously our goal is to fill as many schools with coaches as possible. So please talk about it. If you know anybody that would be interested, let them know. It's never too late to sign up, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for coming.
I echo what they said. Thank you so much for coming and being with us this morning. And I really want you to know how much we are excited for you to partner with us on this. And I really want you to know that you are making a difference. You are making a huge difference, and you're developing our future leaders just by 30 minutes once a week. So I hope that you enjoy the experience. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Susie. I bet Justine wouldn't even mind if you reached out to her. And we are here to assist you through this however we can. So have a great Friday, and we will talk to you later.
Where did you say the sign up sheet was?
So right out on the tables as you come into the auditorium, there's just a notepad. If you wouldn't mind signing your paper, your name on that paper for me.